Welcome back to Code Breakers. Today's episode is close to my heart because we are talking about the most important part of any business, the human being behind it. I'm sitting down with a renowned powerhouse in our Las Vegas community, a renowned keynote speaker, a high level leadership coach, and now a published author, Virginia Knudsen. She is the voice behind the new book, Leading with Heart, Unlocking the Power of Emotional Intelligence. We're going deep into what it actually means to lead with empathy, how to protect your mindset, and why the most successful leaders are the ones who aren't afraid to be human. Virginia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here.
You're so welcome. I'm happy to have you. This conversation is one that is not often thought about by most business owners, and not just business owners, most people who are in lead positions at big companies. So, before we get into all those details, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got here.
Okay. Well, as you know, my name is Virginia Knudsen. I'm CEO and co-founder of BOR, which is a personal and professional development company focused on helping leaders, CEOs, business owners show up as their very best versions of themselves. So we do that through masterminds, leadership development, and my newest book, my new book, which launched this last Monday, Leading with Heart. And a little background on how I got here. I'm a banker by trade, 30 years in the banking industry. Actually, was the first employee and helped found a bank here in town. It was called Bank of George, now G Bank. And my leadership journey started a long time ago, or my emotional intelligence journey. And just a little bit about my story. I was 15 years old and found myself pregnant, and my aunt, well, I didn't find myself pregnant. I got pregnant at 15, and my aunt said to me, "You've disappointed the family, ruined your life, and you're never going to amount to anything." And that moment started the trajectory of the next 40 years of my life. And one of the things I learned was I took that statement and used it as fuel for my success. Yet what I didn't know is myself and others paid high prices for that.
Yeah.
I realized after doing some emotional intelligence work that I was leading from the space of proving myself, of proving her wrong and proving that I was enough, not leading from a place of developing other leaders and a place of empathy and a place of love. And that's the type of leader I wanted to be. And I had to go back to figure out that was the catalyst for some really great things in my life and some things that weren't really working. I built a career. I built a family. I had accolades and titles and the money, but it was never enough for me. Nothing was enough because in my head, I was still a 15-year-old who disappointed the family, ruined my life, and wasn't going to amount to anything. And it was literally a song lyric that shifted everything for me. It was a song that I had heard many times, was rocking to it, driving down Fremont Street. And there was a line in it that I swear I had never heard. And it's funny how our brains work because I think it blocked it out. And the line went, "I'm the kid on every playground that's always chosen last, that single teenage mother trying to overcome her pain." And it just stopped me in my tracks. I had to pull over. I was so emotionally affected by that because I realized in that moment that I'd spent 30 years making decisions and leading and getting triggered from a 15-year-old's mindset and belief, and could see the wake I was leaving behind as a leader, some of it good, some of it not. And that was the shift. And when I started focusing on who I really wanted to be as a leader, as a spouse, as a parent, as a friend. And that's what inspired me to write this book, Leading with Heart and Unlocking the Power of Emotional Intelligence, because I believe from my core that the truly great leaders have high emotional intelligence. They understand themselves, they understand others, how their emotions affect others, and they're able to shift to be able to coach, mentor, inspire people the way they need it, not necessarily the way I would need it. And that's a big part of emotional intelligence.
Love that. Love that. It's crazy how you don't really resonate with the song until you're going through exactly what that song is talking about. Because I've had a lot of those moments, especially, going from teenager to young adult to, going to your being in your 20s and then now in the late 30s. There's so many songs that resonate for sure. So I can understand that. Um, Leadership. Oh man, you said so many wonderful things. So you have had an incredible journey in leadership leading you up to here. What was the moment where you realized that traditional leadership wasn't enough for you and just working the banking 9 to 5 wasn't enough for you?
Well, I started in banking at 16 as a single mom. So, and I left it in 2013 to become an executive coach. And I was really blessed to have to work for two different leaders early in my career. And both were super successful. Both were visionaries. Both were extremely intelligent. And they both had mottos. The first one, who was extremely successful in building our bank and growing our bank, had the motto, do the job or there's 10 people behind you that I can find to do it for you, and led more from the dictatorship and the old style and my way or the highway, which brought fear, right? And if he was upset with you, everybody knew it. It was very obvious. Then he left and another CEO came in that had a completely different message. And that was the one that I believe in and my clients believe in today. And his message was, do the right thing, take care of your people, have a little fun, and they will do the rest. And we really believe that if you put your people first and you lead with heart and you bring them up and build them up and invest in them, not only are they going to stay, but the money's going to come. And that's what we believe in, is building great leaders that have high emotional intelligence, that have empathy and communication skills and are vulnerable and open and understand with the growth mindset that I don't have to have all the answers. I can find them, but it's okay to say I don't have the answer today. Because when you do that, then your employees they trust you. They understand that vulnerability. I don't believe that people follow great leaders. They follow real leaders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Follow.
100%, 100%. Um, so what is it about Las Vegas in this city that in the city's business community that makes leading with heart so important right now? Is it specific to Las Vegas, or have you seen it in other places?
That's a funny question, because I believe everywhere it's important, and everywhere we're struggling in the leadership development area. And the reason I believe this is we promote our high performers. We don't always give them the tools to go from being a high performer to a leader. They're put into a leadership position, and all of a sudden they have to deal with difficult conversations with teams, with different personalities, and we haven't given them the skills to do that. I think that is universal. Vegas
Mm-hmm.
is interesting because every city thinks that they're unique, and most of them, aren't. And business is business, and people are people. But Vegas is a little unique. I mean, still, I've been here 40 years, and the first question people still ask is, "How long have you been here?" And I remember with my previous coaching company that I worked for, they always kept trying to bring people in as executive coaches from other places, and they couldn't understand why they were struggling. And someone said something to me once that I believe, probably about 6 or 7 years ago, explains Vegas to a T. This is a town of 2 million that's still run by 200. And if you're not associated in some way, business wise or personally, with those founders or the next generation of founders, it's tough to break in here because it's always been a transient town. So one of the things that I think is difficult is building that trust. And that's a generational too, because it's always, people come and go in Las Vegas, and it takes a little longer, I think, here to have that vulnerability and have that trust. And I think that that's translated into leadership a little bit more than maybe some of the other
Yeah,
areas.
for sure. So I'm originally from Los Angeles, and I've been here for a good 20 plus years now. And it's one of those things that when you get here, people definitely ask you, how long have you been here? Um, I have met very few Las Vegas natives. There's a lot of people who are, their parents moved here when they were babies and they've grown up here. And you're so right. If you're connected to the right people or the right family, like Vegas is so, it's small. It's a big place, but it's such a small city
It
and
is.
everybody knows everybody.
It's the funniest thing for a town of over 2 million. It's still a small town, and that's some of the great things about it too, because people think of Vegas as the Strip, and we know, those of us who live
They
here,
do.
that is not who we are. As a matter of fact, it still shows up like a small town community, and that's,
Yeah.
with some clicks but really good family vibes too, and it's tapping into that. And on the leadership side, it's getting past those trust issues and the fear of being vulnerable and being real, and stepping into it instead, because that's what's gonna create great leaders.
Yeah, for sure. So, as a coach, you're in the trenches with people. What is the biggest heart block you see with you see entrepreneurs struggling with right now?
We're talking heart block. I think it's what I spoke before, is like the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, from the place of, we are taught that leaders need to be the smartest people in the room. They need to have all the answers. And sometimes it's difficult for leaders to say, I don't have the answer right now. I'm,
Mhm.
working on that, or I made a mistake, or
Yeah.
seems to be a real struggle. And that's what makes them real. That's what makes their people feel comfortable in making a mistake and talking about what's not working, because we need
Mhm.
that. We have that productive conflict and those conversations in order to succeed. And when we look at failure or mistakes as a failure, that's a lot different than looking at them as a learning experience and
Mhm.
celebrate them so that we learn from them and don't make them again. And they need to see that in their leaders too.
Yeah,
And it's okay to have these conversations.
for
The
sure.
number one, I think, would be um, the lack of confidence, or the avoidance of having the difficult conversations. I think that that's one of the biggest thing that gets in the way of great leaders too. I believe that our job as leaders is to give people all the tools to be successful. And one of those tools is letting them know what's working and what's not. Leaders tend to avoid that. As a matter of fact, I've tried it. If you asked 100 people in a room, how many of you want honest, direct, and timely feedback on how you're showing up as a leader, as
Mhm.
a spouse, as a parent, as a friend? Everybody's hand goes up. But if I say, how many of you give honest, direct, and timely feedback to those above you, those below you, and most importantly, those closest to you in your life, I'll get a
Mhm.
hand, two or three hands. There's a huge disconnect between what we say we want and what we're willing to provide based on what we make up about the conversation.
So
Meaning,
I love that point.
or those things. Yeah.
I absolutely love that point because I did a workshop and we did some Myers-Briggs testing, and that same question was asked in that workshop. Now, there in that definitely determines like your personality traits, what type of leader you are, or what type of worker you are, or if you should be a leader. And I think a lot of companies don't take that into consideration when hiring. So you don't use the personality assessments to say this person is not a good fit for the company, but you use it to say this person would work well and fit well in with this specific team or in this specific role. And I don't think that companies are doing that the right way.
I don't think they're doing it enough. It's something that I really focus on, because behavioral styles is part of learning who am I and who are you, and how do I adapt to coach, mentor, and inspire you the way you need it, not the way I would need it, like I said. So why that's so important is, we tend to think as humans that everybody sees the world the same way we do. And we obviously know
Mhm.
that they don't. So there's always different personality styles that we just don't get, or we don't understand how they think, or we just don't click. Once we can show them the differences and help them understand how people work, then we can communicate them communicate to them in a way that they hear you.
Yes.
And we need to know who they are to be able to do that. And so often as leaders, we communicate to everybody the same way. And
Yeah.
today, more than ever before, we have 5 generations in the workforce, more than ever in our history. And each one of those generations has different communication styles, different work ethics, different priorities, are looking for different things. And the ones
Mhm.
fits all leadership does not work anymore. We need to be able to adapt, not just to personality styles and how they see the world and how they take in information, but also the differences in the generations. And I
Mhm.
don't think companies are focusing on that enough. And that's why so many companies are focusing with hiring and retaining good people. Because if
Yeah.
we don't provide them with what they need, they will leave. And
Mhm.
that's showing all over the place with the great resignation, with millennials having on average a 1.5 to 2 year span in an organization. What we've found in my company is that if they understand the vision and mission, their part in it, and you invest in their growth, they will stay. One of our leadership
Yep.
programs we have over 300 graduates here in Las Vegas and an 82% retention rate because
Mhm.
those participants know that their companies believe in them, see their value, and there's a future. They've invested in
Yeah.
them. And it's an 82% retention rate. And I think that's another thing that our our businesses are missing, and that is investing in the next generation, having a succession plan
Yeah.
for what, and not just promoting for performance and letting them sink or swim, which is the way, to
Yes.
be honest, that's the way we did it.
Well, I
Yeah.
can attest to all of those stats that you just named because I am a millennial and the I'm not on the older end of the millennial generation or at the end. I'm like smack dab in the middle of everything. I was born in '88, so I came up in the world of like the Facebooks, the MySpaces, and all of these social platforms that kind of paved the way for what we know social media to be today. I also had, parents and came up in this generation where, like you said, we look at finding a job, we look at trying to get somewhere and stay there consistently and probably move up the ladder, and you go to work, you really don't call off no matter what's going on. So those were some of the things that were instilled in me, but I actually have worked for an amazing company for the past 13 years, which is, much longer than that 2 year time frame that you've spoken about. But all previous positions were anywhere between 2 and 3 years because exactly what you said. They didn't value the employees. They didn't invest in the employees. Like, at what point do we start looking at our mental health and thinking about, yeah, we need 401ks and all these things to to be able to retire, but we also want to enjoy life. We can't spend all life just working and then also having these people that are in management roles who don't really make you feel comfortable at the job. Like, I've left many jobs because of management positions, and I have been in positions myself to where I have allowed my team to be able to speak freely, and they don't even understand why.
Well, I think you just uh, said something really important. People don't leave bad companies; they leave bad leaders. People
Hmm.
don't leave; they leave the leader. And another thing too is understanding the generations. They want different things. So where my generation was focused on, a career, usually with the same company, but also on the house and the car and the kids and the white picket fence. That's not what the younger generations are looking for. They
Hmm.
figured out that Ubering is cheaper than a car payment and insurance. They figured out that their free time and their passions are just as much as their is just as important as their careers, and they want to be able to blend them together. And if we as companies are not willing to find ways to be flexible and provide that for them, they've also figured out that they can stay home longer, they can share flats, they're not all, they're not interested in the same things, and we need to understand that. One of my mentors, Gustavo Gordinsky, who does a lot of speaking, wrote a book about the different generations. He said that he has clients a lot, baby boomer clients or Xers that say, well, we get that, but they need to meet us halfway. And
Yeah.
his response is always, welcome to the bridge to nowhere, because they're not going to meet. That's not going to happen. We need to adapt to generations. Those generations are not going to adapt to the current leaders. And if we don't, then we're going to find it very difficult to hire, inspire, and retain good people. And we everywhere today.
And that's so true, because in the leadership roles that I have, I do work with some older clients, and they've been business owners for so long, and they're like, well, this has always worked and I don't understand this and that. But I'm like, well,
things have changed.
And the biggest thing for me though is I don't have time to do this with you. But in order for me to understand your business, to market and do whatever you're asking me to do, I need you to meet me halfway. I need you to help me understand what your goals are, who your audience is. I can do all the research and figure those things out, but I need to understand specifically from you what we are trying to achieve. And I can't do that if you can't take the time to sit down and let me pick your brain a little bit. So just meet me halfway, and then I'll get you what you need.
Yeah. Things are changing, and we need to be up on that. And the best leaders that are able to shift quicker and keep up with that are the ones that have the higher emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
It just is. I believe that. One of my
It's no
favorite
more. I'm sorry.
book
Go
is
ahead.
in the book. I have several examples of large CEOs that have learned these lessons and put them into play. One of my very first ones everybody knows about, but it's a powerful one, and that is Steve Jobs had no emotional intelligence. He was a jerk. Everybody knows that, and he lost everything, including his own company, because of it. He could have stopped there, like a lot of people do when they fail, but instead he went to figure out what really went wrong. He worked on his own intelligence. He learned how to collaborate and work with others. And he also learned that he's not going to be the high, rah person on the team. So he found somebody who could be, and he stayed in his lane. He learned how to collaborate, built a great team, stayed in his lane, and created something with Apple that no one had created before. He had to lose everything first. And there's so many stories in the book that I think resonate with what we struggle with today, and understanding what our strengths are and what we need to work on is in emotional intelligence to become the leader that we want to be, and that we want to be proud.
So that's a great segue. So the book is officially here. It is available on Amazon Prime. Are there any other platforms it's available on?
Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and it's called Leading with Heart: Unlocking the Power of Emotional Intelligence. It has my story in it, but it also has, like I said, other CEO stories and some real practical exercises that anybody who picks up the book can do to immediately start working on improving areas in their own emotional intelligence.
So what was the thing that made you say, okay, I need to sit down and write about this? I need to have a conversation with the world about emotional intelligence.
Well, the biggest driver was what I already shared, is really realizing that I was leading from a place of fear and proving, and not leading from a place of love and developing further leaders, all based on a past trauma. And I don't think that my story is unique. I think it's universal. Every one of us has trauma stories, has things that happened to us in the past that affect the way we react under pressure, when we're triggered, when something's not working. We just don't always know where it came from, or why we're experiencing the feelings that we're experiencing. And that's part of the understanding our own emotions and being able to regulate them. Every single leader leaves what we call in the book, the leadership wake. Every leader leaves a wake behind when they step out of a room, when they retire. Is that wake the one we intended to leave? And usually it's not. I might walk out of a meeting feeling like I was decisive, and that I walked out being decisive and focused. One of my employees might have experienced me as being abrasive and dismissive. It's not about our intent. It's about the impact and how we leave people feeling when we walk away. What is our leadership wake? And is it the one we intended to leave? And if not, then how do we start working on our empathy, our communication skills, and our focus to be able to provide the type of leadership and inspiration that we intended to leave. And
Yeah.
so understanding the wake that I was leaving behind in the past versus the wake I'm leaving behind today is what inspired me to write the book.
Beautiful, beautiful. So we hear the term emotional intelligence a lot. And for people who are not familiar with what that means, how would you describe that in plain English? I think you've been doing a great job at hitting on those elements of what that is, but how would you describe that, or what would that definition be to you?
I think I would start with what it's not. There's a lot of myths about emotional intelligence that means you have to be nice or a pushover or not have those difficult conversations. And that is not what emotional intelligence is about. Emotional intelligence is about building a culture where people feel comfortable having the difficult conversations. They know that there's not going to be a retaliation for bringing things up and talking about things. It's about,
Mhm.
like I said before, is understanding my emotions and how they affect others, being able to regulate my emotions by understanding that whether I react or I respond is a choice, and taking
Mhm.
that breath in between to literally stop and go, how do I want this situation to end? Because I'm not going to get the outcome I want if I react. But if I take that moment to respond, and then it's about empathy, literally taking off my glasses and putting yours on and trying to see the world from your place. I believe at my core, if we were more curious about what other people believed and why they react the way they do and less righteous about our reactions and our beliefs, it could change the world. So really just stopping and saying, how is this other person seeing this, instead of just focusing on being righteous about my view. And
Mhm.
then, being able to communicate and share from a place of love and growth, and letting go of some of that righteousness when we're having the difficult conversations, when we're coaching and mentoring and pointing out areas for people to improve. Those are all things in emotional intelligence that I believe are really important. So it's not being kind and nice and sugarcoating. It's about creating an environment where you can have the difficult conversations and people know it's coming from a place of love and a place of helping them grow, regardless of what the message is.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a huge one. I'm on a lot of different boards, and personality differences and mixes come in all types of shapes and sizes. And when you're in leadership positions on the with these associations and things like that, these conversations definitely have to be had. So how do you determine, what is, because with everything you have to set boundaries as well. There you have boundary settings, and you want to lead with emotional intelligence. And like you said, it's not just about being a pushover or being nice. It's about having those hard conversations and leading with love. How do you determine um, if and when and how a conversation needs to be had, especially when it is detrimental, or the person you're having this conversation with is detrimental to the company or organization?
Well, the first thing I do with any difficult conversation, because I believe we all have one right now that we're avoiding or not having that we should be having. Um, when it comes to an employee that is either their behavior or their work product or something like that, the first thing I look at in any difficult conversation I'm going to be entering is, what's the purpose of my conversation? Right? That's the first thing. Is the purpose of my conversation to be right because I'm frustrated, or I want to be right about a situation, which automatically is going to make them wrong. So
Mhm.
probably not get the result that I want. The next thing I look at is, where's my DNA on this? Because almost every communication issue or every difficult situation, there is something that I could have done better, could have done sooner, could have looked at. So I look for, where's my DNA on the situation? Because if I can start out taking responsibility for my part, it automatically opens the conversation to be more free flowing and get some information. Then I write some key things down, like, what is this? What is are the symptoms? What's the situation? What's the impact to them, others, the company, myself? What would the impact be if nothing changes in the next 6 months? And then from there, I can go back to having a structured conversation. And I write down just bullet points on what I want to say. And that helps me not go off. That helps them not take me off on a tangent or get into the woulda, coulda, shoulda, and all of that. And
Yeah.
then I start with just questions. So I have in the book, I list 7 offensive words that you don't use in those type of conversations. And they'd be fun. They'd be interested. People would see them as, why would you not use those words? And that's you, your, always, however, why, but, and the reason for that is using those words can put people on the defensive. For example, if I were to say to you, why did you do that? Or why are your reports always late? Or your reports are always late. Those are all finger pointing, blaming, and shaming questions. If I were to say, help me understand how we got here, that's the exact same conversation, but I might get a different result. I might actually not only understand how we got here, but might even find out that my instructions might have not have been that clear, or I might have had a in this to open up that dialogue. So it's first understanding the come from, why am I having it? Is this to be right? Or is this to really improve our relationship or help you be more successful? 2 is, how do I want to structure this conversation, knowing who you are, knowing your behavior styles, knowing how you need to be communicated to, shifting my conversation there, and then staying away from the words or the situations that are going to get us into trouble in this conversation. So there's a step-by-step process, but I do find that it doesn't just help us professionally as leaders. It really helps us in our personal relationships too, because I think a lot of us walk around in inauthentic relationships because we're holding back on really speaking our truths because of our.
I was thinking that as you were speaking, like, man, those words and conversations would definitely help in certain instances with people that I know personally, for sure. All right, so
it's just trying to get to the bottom of what's really going on. And
yeah. I mean, we're so used to just being direct. I think as humans, being direct in certain ways, your, like you said, these are words that are just normal in vocabulary. When you change the way that you're thinking about things and asking those questions, then you get a different outcome.
I promise, and I invite anybody that's listening, just in the next 2 weeks, to just pay attention to how often we use those words in conversations. You, your, always, never. You'll be surprised.
Yeah.
You and your are the biggest things to practice changing, but it really changes the conversation when we can use we, or help me, or, let's take a look at the overall and do it more collaborative than finger pointing.
Love it. Love it. So for those leaders who think that leading with heart sounds soft or weak, how does this approach actually lead to stronger, more profitable business?
Well, there's a lot of data and stuff out there besides just my belief, but leading with heart and having that higher emotional intelligence, we know EQ is more important than IQ when it comes to longevity and happiness, not only in careers, in life. And leading with heart actually gives us the power to build vulnerable, cohesive, and loving teams. And those are the ones that are going to produce for us. They're there, they're bought in, they're willing to do what it takes. We're all going in the same direction, and they're happy.
Yeah.
And engaged. So.
All right. So that leads us right into our next portion of this. We are going to do something called the mindset game. So I want to do some fast-paced questions and get some straightforward answers from you. So what is the very first thing you do in the morning to get your mindset right before you start your day?
The very first thing I do when I wake up is my gratitude list. So I come up with at least 3 things that I'm grateful for. There is a video, it's called The Happiness Advantage. I play it in one of my leadership classes from Sean Aker, and he has some steps that if you do these every day, changes our whole mindset. And the first is write down 3 things that you're grateful for. The second is journal something positive that happened to you the day before, because that gets you back, that raises your endorphins and brings back that memory and gets you there. Get up and do at least 20 minutes of some kind of exercise, even if it's just walking, or just telling your brain that your body and your mind are important. And then the other thing that I do is random acts of kindness. Random acts of kindness bring back, they just make us feel good and others feel good. And when I say random, I do them so that nobody knows that it's me. And There's all kinds of little things that you can do, but all of these things help shift our mindset to improve our happiness and our well-being. And so those are the things I try to do daily to keep myself on the right track.
Those are wonderful things. I'm definitely gonna look up that video. That all of those things made me smile. So, what is one piece of advice you'd give a leader who feels they've lost their heart for their business?
Take a pause, go back and really think about or write down what had them be passionate about their business in the first place. Maybe do on a scale of 1 to 10, rate when they were at their happiest, their most engaged, and just in their zone with their business, and rate the number they are now, and then determine what's that gap, what's missing from when you were an 8 or a 9 to a 5 or a 6 now. Look at that gap and see what's missing. Just looking at that sometimes can take us back to what really inspired us and motivated us in the beginning. And then we can start focusing on getting that back, if that's what we want to do. If it's not, then it's time to possibly look at a change, because nothing's worse than being somewhere that you're not inspired, engaged, and happy to
Yeah.
be. Feel like
So
you're
many
making a difference.
great gems. So many great gems. If you guys are listening, I hope you are taking notes. So many great gems. So you're about to walk onto the stage to do a keynote. What is your power move to get centered?
Oh, this is when I not only when I do any keynote, when I walk into any presentation, teach any class. I am a believer. So the first thing I do that is I open the door before I walk in. I pause and I let God go in first. And when I do that, I know that it's coming from a place of a calling and not from me. If I start thinking about me, how I'm doing what I'm saying, I'm in trouble. If I just focus on providing value, focusing out, and I let God do the work, then it usually goes pretty well.
Beautiful. Would you rather be remembered for the money you made or the way you made people feel?
The whole book and everything I do is about the way I make people feel. That's what's most important to me, is the legacy of leaders that I leave behind. It's
That
my
was an
way.
easy one. I just added that in there. Just if
Tried
so
that. It
people
didn't work. I tried that by proving myself through accolades and money and titles and all of
yeah.
that. It wasn't enough for me. So
If
that's what
people aren't
inspired
getting it by now, I don't know what you've been listening to.
me.
Lead with your emotional intelligence and with your heart. So we're going from the mindset shift to the hustle part of the business, which, we all know. You said it in the beginning. You were hustling, 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 and trying to get to this place on your journey. And my favorite thing to say is, we always want to get there, but once we get there, wherever that there is, there's always another there we want to get to. And your other place you wanted to get to, what that you realize it was leading with heart. So entrepreneurs, we can get really exhausted from just pounding the ground, doing the day to day. How does focusing on that emotional intelligence help founders recognize the signs of burnout before they hit a wall?
Well, we run mastermind groups and work with mid to large size CEOs and executives. And one of the things that we like to say is we work with the whole leader. It's not just business. It's not just EQ. It's working with them mentally, spiritually, physically. You can't take care of others if you don't take care of yourself. You can't run a good, healthy business if you're not healthy. So when we are physically and mentally healthy, when we're working out, eating right, getting enough sleep, it's easier to lead with heart. It's easier to make the tougher decisions, to pivot when things aren't going right. When we let those things go, it gets more difficult. So the thing we always go back to is, how are you doing physically, mentally, and spiritually when things are rough? Are you managing your stress by getting enough sleep and eating right? Because we sometimes, some of us, myself included, tend to, that's when we're off of our diet, not exercising and stressing and not
Yeah.
sleeping. Getting back to the basics of taking care of ourselves first. There's a reason they say put on your mask first, is you
Yeah.
can't a great organization if you're not leading yourself.
Yeah.
So starts there.
Man, you are answering like all of my questions before I even get there. You're doing such a great job.
Talk a lot, I know.
No, it's fine because you just answered it all. You answered so many questions all in one, but it's good because that leads what you said leads me into self-regulation. So, business is stressful when things are going wrong. How do you coach leaders to stay calm and lead with the heart instead of reacting out of fear?
How do I stay?
How do you coach leaders to stay calm and lead with their heart instead of reacting out of fear?
Well, I'll give you a really great exercise that I use that really works. So we talk about E plus R equals O, which is an equation. E is the event. An event is immoral. It just happens. We as humans tend to place a positive or negative onto that. For instance, I get a ticket on my way to work and I might go into a spin and think that's negative and let it ruin my day. When what if that getting that ticket just stopped me from being in a 5-car pile up down the
Yeah.
road? You never know that it's good or bad, but we do that. Then you have the R, which is whether I choose to react or respond. And then you have the outcome. We have no control over the event or the outcome. We do have control whether we tend to react or respond. And if we take the time and use some of the tools to respond, we tend to get a better outcome or the outcome that we're looking for. So one of the exercises that I teach to help people do that, because we tend to react in the moment, is to take this pause. And a good way of doing that is to relax your jaw, slightly open your mouth, gently place your tongue at the top of your, at the roof of your mouth, and breathe. And as you do that, in just a few breaths, you'll be able to feel your shoulders relax, your heart rate slow. What that actually is doing is it's tricking your brain to go back to when you were a baby and suckling and putting you in a safe place, which is just enough time, just seconds for you to stop and say, how do I want this situation to end? And in that moment, you can choose a response versus reaction. It's just a little thing, but really taking that moment to go, okay, instead of react and say something I'm going to be sorry for later or do something I'm not going to be happy with, it gives myself that time to respond in a manner that's going to get me the outcome that I want.
Yes. Beautiful.
That's helpful, but that's what I teach in order to make sure that we can respond more often than we react.
Yeah, lovely. Because we are responsive people, so we definitely just respond sometimes without thinking things through. So our fast round, and this is the final round. We are whittling down to the nitty gritty of it all. So complete this sentence. The biggest myth about leading with heart is.
The biggest, say that one more time. The biggest what of leading with heart?
Myth about leading with heart is.
I think that's what I mentioned before, is the biggest myth is that means I'm going to be soft. That means I'm going to let people get away with things. I'm not going to have a culture of accountability. And that is the biggest myth. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Leading with heart creates cultures of accountability, creates personal responsibility, as opposed to being a victim to the leader, to the organization, to other people. It's the exact opposite, that it's not about leading soft or not leading. It's about having the courage to be a powerful leader by caring about the people you're leading.
For those leaders who are feeling overwhelmed right now, what is one small thing they can do for themselves this afternoon to reset?
The first thing is remind themselves that we all have the same 24 hours. And the more I say I'm overwhelmed, buried, or I believe the universe will give us more than that. So one of my mantras is there's plenty of time for everything that's important. I choose what's important in my priorities. And sometimes I'll say that 50 times a day, but I have the same amount of time as the president of the United States or a single mom with 5 kids that's working 2 jobs. We all have the same time. It's what we choose to prioritize. So stop, pause, and come up with our priorities. And then check in. How am I doing mentally, physically, and spiritually? And what can I do right now to move that needle forward? In whatever I need
to. Many words were said in that were amazing. Oh, yes. I'm going to rewatch this and I'm going to take some notes because you have said so many great things.
Well, thank
All
you
right.
so much for the time and the opportunity. And this has been so much fun. I hope it was helpful. And if anybody's interested, Leading with Heart, Unlocking the Power of Emotional Intelligence on Amazon. And it's available
Yes.
at a launch price for today is the last day. So it's available at a significantly discounted price in celebration of our launch.
Well, you already gave them the plug about where they can find you and your book. I will be tagging you on on LinkedIn and on Facebook. But again, one more time, where can the decoders find your book, Leading with Heart, and follow your journey?
Amazon.com, Leading with Heart, Unlocking the Power of Emotional Intelligence. You can also learn more about me and BOR at borcommunity.com and a little bit more about what we do.
Thank you so much for being here, Virginia. It's been a pleasure. I probably enjoyed this conversation more than a lot of conversations I've had all year, and I've had some great conversations. Um, get your
Yeah.
Code Breakers merchandise, Heart of the Hustle. It's in you, not on you, because I do believe that. You can get it at FranishaHayes.com /codebreakers.com. Until next time, decoders.